Caitlin Clark just delivered one of the best individual performances of her season, a career night that had fans buzzing across the league. And within hours, a former ESPN host tried to tell everyone it didn't actually mean anything. What happened next turned into one of the biggest online pile-ons of the WNBA season so far. Tonight we're breaking down exactly what Clark did on the court, what Cindy Brunson said about it, and how badly that take backfired. Let's start with the performance itself, because by any measure, this was a special night for Caitlin Clark. On Sunday, the Indiana Fever traveled to Chicago to take on the Sky, and Clark put together one of the most complete offensive showcases of her career. She finished the night with 37 points, 10 assists, and 3 rebounds, shooting 13 of 24 from the field, including an incredible 8 of 12 from three-point range. That eighth made three was actually a career high for Clark. She wasn't doing it alone either. Kelsey Mitchell added 30 points of her own, and together the two combined for 67 points as the Fever piled up a franchise record 18 three-pointers as a team. Indiana cruised to a dominant 113-90 win. By any reasonable basketball standard, that's an elite, efficient, complete performance. Nearly 40 points on strong shooting splits, double-digit assists, and a career-high mark from beyond the arc, all in a decisive road win. It should have been a straightforward, universally celebrated night for one of the best young players in the sport. Instead, it turned into a controversy, and the source of that controversy was Cindy Brunson. For context, Brunson is a former ESPN anchor who has also worked as a play-by-play voice for the Phoenix Mercury and for Athletes Unlimited women's basketball broadcasts. She's a recognizable name within women's basketball media circles. And on Sunday night, she took to threads with a post comparing Clark's 37-point night to a separate performance from Dallas Wings star Paige Bueckers, who scored 32 points in just 26 minutes that same day in a win over the Seattle Storm. Brunson's post read, quote, "Miss me with that stat padding 37 points. On the floor up 20 with a minute to go BS." The 32 points in just 26 minutes was way more impressive from the star on the playoff team from the Lone Star State. In other words, Brunson was arguing that because the Fever were up big late in the game, and because Clark stayed on the floor while the outcome was already decided, her 37-point night should essentially be discounted as empty stat padding, while Bueckers' 32 points in fewer minutes were the more legitimately impressive outing of the two. It didn't take long for that post to get picked apart, and it happened fast, with actual numbers. Fans immediately began fact-checking Brunson's framing in the replies. According to the box score, Clark actually scored 19 of her 37 points in the second half. The Fever were only up by 13 points with under 3 minutes left in the third quarter when the Sky briefly tied the game at 58-all, meaning Indiana's lead wasn't the comfortable, game-over cushion Brunson's post implied for most of the second half. Clark then fueled the Fever's decisive scoring run from that tie game onward. It wasn't until the closing stretch, with the Fever up around 20 points and roughly a minute left, that the outcome was truly out of reach, and by that point Clark had already produced the overwhelming majority of her scoring while the game was still competitive. The comparison to Bueckers' game also didn't hold up quite as cleanly as Brunson framed it. Dallas built a 20-point lead over Seattle with about 2 minutes left in the third quarter, at which point Bueckers exited and didn't check back in for the fourth quarter at all, finishing with her 32 points in 26 total minutes. Interestingly, when you actually line up the two performances possession by possession, Clark reached her 32nd point in a similar time frame within her own game as well, meaning by that specific measure, the two performances were arguably far closer in efficiency than Brunson's post suggested. Brunson didn't stop with just the stat padding claim either. She went further, describing Clark's big scoring nights more broadly as a, quote, small sample size, seemingly trying to downplay the significance of standout individual performances like this one within the larger picture of Clark's season. The backlash was immediate and intense. Fans flooded the replies and quote posts calling out what they saw as a clear double standard being applied specifically to Clark. One particularly pointed response read, quote, "If you wanted to, you could actively contribute to lowering the vitriol and changing the way the league is viewed by the average person, but instead you choose to throw fuel on the fire. You don't love the game. You love the drama, and that's the problem." Other fans reacted even more bluntly, with one widely shared comment reading, quote, "I pray to God you get help," in response to Brunson's characterization of the game. The criticism got loud enough and spread wide enough that Brunson ended up deleting her original post entirely. In the aftermath, she claimed the post had prompted what she described as racist and transphobic comments directed at her, and framed the backlash in that light rather than addressing the statistical pushback directly. It's also worth noting this wasn't an isolated incident for Brunson when it comes to how she's approached storylines involving Caitlin Clark and the Fever this season. She had previously drawn criticism for comments defending Chicago Sky guard Dejounte Carrington following Carrington's flagrant 2 ejection for a play that left Sophie Cunningham bleeding from the mouth, with Brunson arguing at the time that Cunningham, not Carrington, was the one who deserved criticism on that play. That earlier moment had already put Brunson at the center of a heated media conversation about how women's basketball commentary treats different players and different storylines. Meanwhile, the reaction to Clark's actual on-court performance from other, much bigger names in basketball told a very different story than Brunson's take. LeBron James publicly acknowledged Clark's big night, adding his voice to the wave of recognition for what she'd just done on the floor, a notable contrast to a former ESPN anchor trying to frame the same performance as inflated or meaningless. There's also a broader pattern worth mentioning here, because this wasn't the only recent example of Clark's accomplishments getting seemingly downplayed by media figures this season. Just the week before, when the Fever played their first ever game in Toronto against the Tempo, the 19,300-seat Scotiabank Arena sold out completely for the occasion. When ESPN's on-the-ground reporter Holly Rowe posted video of the packed, sold-out building, she didn't mention Clark by name at all in that post, despite Clark's presence being the obvious driving factor behind that level of demand. That moment sparked its own separate wave of criticism online, with fans and commentators accusing parts of the WNBA media ecosystem of consistently failing to give Clark credit for the attention and business she continues to generate for the league, even while her individual performances keep shattering records and moving the needle commercially. Put together, these back-to-back moments have fueled an ongoing conversation among fans about how consistently certain media figures are willing to credit Clark's on-court excellence, versus how quickly some are willing to find a reason to qualify, downplay, or reframe at the moment a truly dominant performance happens. Brunson's stat-padding post became the clearest, most direct example of that tension boiling over into a full-blown public controversy, especially once the actual box score numbers didn't support the framing she'd built her entire argument around. For Clark herself, the response has essentially been to keep letting her play on the court do the talking. A 37-point, 10-assist night on a career-high 8 made threes speaks for itself statistically, regardless of how any individual commentator chooses to frame it afterward. And with the Fever continuing to push through the final stretch of the regular season toward the playoffs, performances like this one are exactly the kind of tape that's going to matter most once postseason basketball actually begins. Let us know in the comments what you think about how this whole situation played out. Was Brunson's original take a fair basketball argument that just didn't hold up under scrutiny, or was it something bigger about how Clark's accomplishments keep getting treated by parts of the media? Drop your thoughts below. If you want to stay updated on this story and everything else happening with Caitlin Clark and the WNBA heading into the playoffs, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update.